1. From climate change to climate emergency, environmental side. Climate change has been a major concern for decades, as the Earth's temperature has been steadily rising due to human activity. This warming trend has been linked to an increase in extreme weather events, such as heat waves, hurricanes, and wildfires, as well as a rise in sea levels. The evidence for climate change can be traced back to the late 19th century, when scientists first began studying the Earth's temperature and the role of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In the mid-20th century, researchers began to understand the link between human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, and the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the evidence for climate change became increasingly clear, as temperatures continued to rise and the impacts of climate change became more severe. In response, governments and international organizations have attempted to address the issue through a variety of measures, including the adoption of the Paris Agreement, which aims to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions and limit the increase in global temperatures to well below 2 degrees Celsius. Despite these efforts, the climate emergency continues to worsen, and many experts believe that much more needs to be done to address the crisis. From reducing our reliance on fossil fuels and adopting clean energy sources, to protecting and restoring natural ecosystems, there are many steps that individuals, communities, and governments can take to combat the climate emergency and protect the planet for future generations. 1.1. Where do we come from? Theory behind climate change. The basic scientific theory behind climate change is that greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, CO2, methane, CH4, nitrous oxide, N2O, fluorinated gases, F gases, and water vapor, trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, preventing it from escaping back into space and causing the Earth's surface to warm. This process, known as the greenhouse effect, is a natural occurrence that has helped to maintain a warm, habitable climate on Earth for thousands of years. However, while it is necessary for life on Earth, too much of it can have negative consequences. These gases are released into the atmosphere through natural processes, such as the decomposition of organic matter, but also through human activities, such as the burning of fossil fuels for energy production and transportation, such as coal, oil and natural gas, deforestation, agriculture, or industrial processes. The rapid increase of greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere, in recent centuries, has caused the Earth's temperature to rise at an unprecedented rate, leading to the current global climate crisis. The scientific consensus is that the current rapid rate of global warming is mainly caused by human activities, based on a range of evidence. The consequences of climate change are numerous and far-reaching, including rising sea levels, more frequent and severe heat waves, droughts, floods and storms, and disruptions to ecosystems and human societies. These impacts are expected to worsen if global greenhouse gas emissions are not drastically reduced, by transitioning into a low-carbon economy, use of renewable energy sources, improving energy efficiency, etc. History of climate change action. The fight against climate change began with the recognition of the problem by scientists and policymakers in the late 20th century, when they started to study the potential impacts of carbon dioxide emissions on the Earth's climate. As evidence of global warming and its potential impacts grew, calls for action became more urgent. Efforts to address climate change and mitigate its impacts have been ongoing since then, with international efforts to address the issue gaining momentum over time, and increasing awareness and action from individuals, businesses, and governments around the world. The following are some of the key milestones in the history of climate change-related actions. In 1979, the World Climate Conference was held in Geneva, Switzerland, marking the first international conference on climate change. The conference highlights the potential impacts of climate change and calls for greater scientific research. During the 1980s, scientists began to observe changes in the Earth's climate that were consistent with global warming, including rising temperatures and melting glacier. That is why in 1988, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, was established by the United Nations, to ensure further research and provide scientific advice on the issue. The IPCC released its first assessment report in 1990, which concluded that global warming was happening and was likely caused by human activities. In 1992, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, was created and signed by 154 countries at the Rio Earth Summit, establishing a framework for international cooperation on climate change. The treaty aimed to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous human interference with the climate system. Years later, in 1997, the Kyoto Protocol was adopted at the UNFCCC's third conference of the parties, setting binding targets for developed countries to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by an average of 5.2% below 1990 levels by 2012. The Copenhagen Accord was reached in 2009, aiming to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and provided a framework for countries to submit voluntary emissions reduction targets. The UNFCCC's conference of 2019 was held in Madrid, focusing on finalizing the rulebook for implementing the Paris Agreement, but many issues remained unresolved. More recently, in 2021, the UNFCCC's was held in Glasgow, to focus on increasing ambition in emissions reduction targets and addressing the financing needed for climate change adaptation and mitigation. At the European level, various national and regional climate policies and initiatives have been established, such as the European Union's emissions trading system and the United States Clean Air Act. Despite all these efforts, global greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, and the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly severe. Many experts believe that more ambitious and coordinated action is needed at the international level to address the crisis and protect the planet for future generations. Climate emergency. The term climate emergency has been used in recent years to describe the urgent need for action to address the ongoing and increasingly severe impacts of climate change. While the phenomenon of climate change itself has been ongoing for thousands of years, the current phase of global warming and its impacts are primarily driven by human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and gas, which release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and traps heat. The use of the term climate emergency to describe the urgency of the situation gained traction in 2018, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, released a special report on the impacts of global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The report highlighted the urgent need for rapid and far-reaching transitions in energy, land, urban and infrastructure systems, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the worst impacts of climate change. In 2019, the term climate emergency gained further prominence when the UK Parliament became the first national legislature to declare a climate emergency, followed by several other countries and cities around the world. This ignited a wave of climate protests and declarations of a climate emergency by governments and organizations around the world, recognizing the gravity and urgency of the situation and calling for immediate and drastic action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and mitigate the effects of climate change. The term has since become a rallying cry for climate activists and others calling for urgent action on climate change. However, the recognition of the urgency of the situation and the need for action to address climate change has been growing for many years, and will continue to be a pressing issue for decades to come. 1.2. Where are we now? What is the current state of the Earth's tipping points? Climate scientists have identified several tipping points that could have catastrophic consequences for the Earth's climate if they are crossed. These tipping points are threshold levels of warming, or other environmental changes that could trigger irreversible changes to the planet's climate system. For example, if the Arctic ice cap were to completely melt, it could cause a feedback loop that would further accelerate warming, as the dark ocean surface would absorb more heat from the sun than the reflective ice. Recent studies suggest that the Greenland ice sheet may be melting faster than expected, with the potential to cause significant sea level rise. There is also evidence that the West Antarctic ice sheet may be more vulnerable to collapse than previously thought. Other tipping points include the collapse of coral reefs, the thawing of permafrost and the disruption of ocean circulation patterns, among others. The loss of coral reefs due to warming and acidifying oceans is also a concern, as these ecosystems support a wide range of marine life and provide important benefits to human societies. The thawing of permafrost in the Arctic could release large amounts of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere, further exacerbating global warming. The disruption of ocean circulation patterns, such as the Gulf Stream, could also have far-reaching consequences for global climate patterns. While the exact state of the Earth's tipping points is uncertain, there is increasing evidence that we are approaching critical thresholds in the planet's climate system, and urgent action is needed to mitigate the worst impacts of climate change. The Great Acceleration. The Great Acceleration is a term used to describe the rapid increase in human activity and technological development that occurred since the mid-20th century. This period of exponential global economic and population growth led to unprecedented increased levels of energy consumption, resource extraction, greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, and other forms of pollution and environmental degradation. It has had significant impacts on the Earth's natural systems and contributed significantly to the current climate crisis and the alarming speed of Earth's temperature rise. To address the challenges posed by the Great Acceleration, there have been a range of efforts at the local, national, and international levels. For example, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, established in 1992, achieved several important international agreements. Governments, businesses, and individuals have been investing in renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind power, to reduce reliance on fossil fuels and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There is an emphasis to carry sustainable agricultural practices, such as reducing food waste, promoting regenerative farming techniques, or increasing the use of plant-based diets, which can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Another measure focuses on urban planning. Cities are taking steps to become more sustainable and reduce their carbon footprint by promoting public transportation, increasing energy efficiency, and promoting green spaces. Although probably the most important step is raising awareness and promoting education about the Great Acceleration's impacts and the importance of taking action to mitigate climate change, which are critical to driving action at all levels. While progress has been made, more action is needed to meet the scale of the challenge and ensure a sustainable future for all. The sixth extinction. The sixth extinction is a term used to describe the ongoing mass extinction of species that is occurring due to human activity, such as habitat destruction, overharvesting, pollution, climate change, and the introduction of non-native species. Climate change is one of the main drivers of the sixth extinction, as rising temperatures and changing weather patterns are disrupting ecosystems and making it more difficult for species to adapt, thus causing many of them to be at risk of disappearing forever. The phenomenon is named after the 5 previous mass extinction events in Earth's history, which are believed to have been caused by natural disasters, such as volcanic eruptions or asteroid impacts. However, the current extinction event is unique in that it is primarily driven by a single species, Homo sapiens, and is happening at an unprecedented rate. The current extinction rate is estimated to be between 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background extinction rate, meaning that species are going extinct much faster than they can evolve or adapt. Some of the most iconic and well-known species, such as elephants, rhinos, tigers, and polar bears, are threatened with extinction, but many lesser-known and less charismatic species are also at risk. In fact, it is estimated that up to 1 million species could go extinct in the coming decades, if current trends continue. Efforts to address the sixth extinction include the protection of important habitats, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, the promotion of sustainable agriculture and forestry practices, and the reduction of pollution and other harmful human activities. However, urgent and sustained action is needed to slow the rate of extinction and preserve the planet's biodiversity for future generations. Practical examples of climate change evidence from around the world. The impacts of climate change are being felt by people and ecosystems everywhere. There is overwhelming evidence of climate change from all around the world. The following are just a few examples of climate change evidence since the 19th century. Europe, temperatures have risen by 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and the region has experienced more heat waves, storms, and flooding. The United States, the average temperature has increased by 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and heat waves, hurricanes, and wildfires are becoming more frequent and severe. Australia, temperatures have risen by 1.44 degrees Fahrenheit, and the country has experienced an increase in heat waves, bushfires, and drought. Asia, temperatures have risen by 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit, and the region has experienced more extreme weather events, such as typhoons and monsoons. Below, we will comment on climate change evidence since the late 19th century, from Spain, Kosovo, Italy, and Jordan, the countries of the entities involved in the project which allowed the creation of this book. Spain, temperatures have risen by 1.35 degrees Fahrenheit. Spain has experienced more frequent and severe heat waves, for example, experiencing its hottest summer on record, In 2017, with temperatures reaching up to 118 degrees Fahrenheit in some parts of the country. Droughts have increased, as well as more frequent and intense wildfires. Also in 2017, a series of devastating wildfires broke out across the country, destroying more than 500,000 acres of land and killing dozens of people. Kosovo, temperatures have risen by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit and the country has experienced more frequent heatwaves and drought. For example, in 2018, Kosovo experienced its worst drought in decades, with water levels in rivers and reservoirs reaching record lows. On the other hand, they have also experienced an increase in extreme weather events, such as heavy rain and flooding. In 2010, a major flood caused widespread damage and disrupted the country's infrastructure. Italy, temperatures have risen by 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit and the country has experienced more frequent and severe heat waves. For example, in 2003, a heatwave claimed the lives of more than 20,000 people. They have also experienced more frequent and intense storms and flooding. In 2018, a series of severe storms caused widespread damage and disrupted transportation. Jordan, temperatures have risen by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit and the country has experienced more frequent and severe heat waves. In 2015, Jordan experienced its hottest summer on record, with temperatures reaching up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit in some regions. They have also experienced an increase in drought, as well as more frequent and intense storms and flooding. In 2018, a major storm caused widespread damage. It is crucial that we take urgent action to address the crisis and protect the planet for future generations. 1.3. Where are we heading? Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC report and predictions. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, is a United Nations body that brings together scientists from around the world to assess the latest research on climate change and its impacts. The IPCC was established in 1988 and has published a number of reports over the years, each of which provides a comprehensive overview of the state of the science on climate change. One of the most significant reports published by the IPCC was the Fifth Assessment Report, which was released in 2013 and 2014. This report contained a number of key findings. First of all, it was shared that the Earth's temperature had risen by about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century, and the rate of warming had increased over the past few decades. It was demonstrated that the reason behind this fact was human activity, particularly the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation, as the main drivers of climate change. Another finding was that the Earth's climate is changing in a number of ways, including an increase in temperature, a rise in sea level, and more frequent and severe extreme weather events. Another conclusion was that the impacts of climate change were already being felt around the world, and they were expected to become more severe in the coming decades if greenhouse gas emissions are not significantly reduced. The report also made a number of predictions about the future of the Earth's climate. These predictions were based on a range of scenarios, including a business as usual scenario in which greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise, and a scenario in which strong action is taken to reduce emissions. The report predicted that if greenhouse gas emissions are not significantly reduced, global temperatures are likely to rise by 4.9 degrees Fahrenheit to 8.6 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. Regarding sea levels, it anticipated that it is likely they will rise by 1.2 to 3.2 feet, also by the end of the century, which could have serious consequences for coastal communities around the world. On the other hand, extreme weather events, such as heatwaves, hurricanes, and wildfires, are likely to become more frequent and severe. The IPCC's reports and predictions have played a key role in shaping the global response to climate change, and they have helped to increase awareness of the issue among policymakers and the general public. Other models about the Earth's future. There are many models that attempt to predict the future of the Earth, but they generally fall into two broad categories: those that focus on the physical and environmental changes that the planet will undergo, and those that focus on the social and economic changes that will occur. In terms of physical and environmental changes, there are many models that attempt to predict the effects of climate change, such as rising sea levels, more frequent and severe weather events, and changes in the distribution of plant and animal species. These models typically use computer simulations based on various scenarios of greenhouse gas emissions and other factors, such as land use and deforestation. In addition to climate change, Other physical and environmental changes that could affect the future of the Earth include natural disasters such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts, as well as the depletion of natural resources such as fossil fuels and water. There are many models to predict the future of the Earth. Each model has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the best approach will depend on the specific research question being addressed. Here we are going to name and describe some of them. The climate models, for example, are computer models that simulate the Earth's climate system and are used to make predictions about future changes in temperature, precipitation, sea level, atmospheric circulation, and other climate variables. Some examples of climate models include the Community Earth System Model, CESM, and the Goddard Institute for Space Studies, GISS Model E. We also have the Integrated Assessment Models, IAMS, which combine climate with economic data to explore the interactions between climate change and the economy. They can be used to evaluate the costs and benefits of different policy options for addressing climate change, and to assess the feasibility of different approaches to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Some examples of IAMS include the Integrated Assessment Modeling Framework, IAMC, and the Dynamic Integrated Model of Climate and the Economy, DICE. The ecological models are used to study the interactions between organisms and their environment, and to make predictions about how ecosystems will respond to changes such as climate change, habitat loss, or pollution. Examples of ecological models include the Individual-Based Model, IBM, and the Food Web Integrated Population Model, FIP. There are also population models which predict changes in human population size and demographics over time. They can be used to study the potential impacts of population growth on resources, the environment, and society. Two examples of population models are the United Nations World Population Prospects, UNWPP, and the Human Population Dynamics, HPD model. Another interesting kind of models are the agent-based models. They simulate the behavior of individual agents, such as people or animals, and their interactions with each other and their environment. They can be used to study complex systems, such as cities or ecosystems, and to make predictions about how they will respond to changes. Some examples of these kinds of models are the Swarm platform and the NetLogo software. There are also different models depending on the specific area where we want to see the impact: global climate models, GCMs, which study the global scale impacts of climate change, and regional climate models, RCMs, which study the impacts of climate change on local or regional scales, such as the potential consequences of sea level rise on coastal communities. On the social and economic side, models of the Earth's future often focus on factors such as population growth, economic development, and political stability. Some models suggest that the world's population will continue to grow, putting increasing pressure on resources and leading to more conflict and instability. Other models suggest that advances in technology and changes in social norms could lead to a more sustainable and equitable future. All these models are complex and often uncertain, but they can provide valuable insights into the potential consequences of our actions, and help guide decision-making to create a more sustainable and resilient planet. Successful examples of mitigating and adapting to climate change on a personal, local, national, and international level. The evidence is irrefutable. Unless we act immediately to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we will not be able to stave off the worst consequences of climate change. The outlook can seem depressing. But the good news is that there is a lot we can still do as individuals to change this narrative. Everyone can help limit climate change. From the way we travel, to the electricity we use, the food we eat, and the things we buy, we can make a difference. At a personas level, we can start with the following successful actions to help tackle the climate crisis. We can reduce our energy consumption at home by turning off lights when not in use, using energy-efficient appliances and light bulbs, and adjusting the thermostat to use less heating and cooling. This way, individuals can reduce their carbon footprint and lower greenhouse gas emissions. We can also reduce our carbon footprint and lower emissions from transportation by choosing sustainable transportation, like walking, biking, taking public transit, or driving an electric or hybrid car. Furthermore, by reducing meat consumption and eating more plant-based foods, individuals can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture and livestock production. On the other hand, in order to adapt to climate change, and reduce our vulnerability to power outages and the impacts of extreme weather events, individuals can, for example, increase their energy efficiency by making homes and buildings more energy efficient. Another idea is to install low-flow shower heads, faucets and toilets, and use rainwater harvesting systems to reduce our vulnerability to water shortages and droughts. Moreover, individuals can help build resilience and strengthen social connections in the face of climate-related challenges by getting involved in community-based initiatives such as local food co-ops, community gardens, and emergency preparedness groups. The key is to take action in whatever ways are feasible and meaningful to each individual. There are also many examples of successful efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change around the world. One of the most effective ways is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by transitioning to renewable energy sources. There are many successful examples of this happening around the world, such as the rapid growth of solar and wind power in countries like China, the United States, and Germany. Improving energy efficiency is another effective way to mitigate climate change. At an international level, there are many examples of entities adopting energy-efficient appliances, buildings, and transportation systems. Many countries and regions have implemented carbon pricing schemes, such as carbon taxes or cap-and-trade systems, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. These schemes put a price on carbon emissions, which incentivizes businesses and individuals to reduce their emissions and adopt cleaner technologies. Another measure is to build resilient infrastructures to adapt to the changing climate. There are many successful examples of this happening, such as the construction of sea walls and other protective measures to protect coastal communities from sea level rise and storms. A global approach to adopting more sustainable and climate-resilient methods of farming can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase the ability of agriculture to adapt to the changing climate. For example, many countries are focusing on conservation agriculture practices, which can help to reduce soil erosion and improve water retention. At a regional level, we will focus on information about the situation in Spain, Jordan, Kosovo, and Italy, since the entities involved in the project which allows the creation of this book are based in such countries. Spain is taking several successful measures to address climate change. They have implemented an Energy Efficiency in Public Buildings program, which involves the retrofitting of public buildings with energy-efficient lighting, heating, and cooling systems, as well as the installation of solar water heaters and other energy-efficient technologies. Various incentive programs are put in place in various Spanish cities, which allow the distribution of energy-efficient appliances, such as LED lights and efficient refrigerators, to households and small businesses. Regarding renewable energy sources, in Spain, there are several very important photovoltaic parks, like the Almadilla, located in the province of Ciudad Real, with a capacity of 250 megawatts, or the Donana Photovoltaic Park, located in Seville, being the largest solar energy facility in the world, with a capacity of 300 megawatts. Another measure in the region of Castilla and León involves the construction of several wind energy projects, with a total capacity of over 1,000 megawatts, under the Wind Energy in Castilla and León program. On the other hand, some sustainable transportation measures are also successful, like the Madrid Central program, which allows the creation of a low-emissions zone in the capital city center and the promotion of electric and hybrid vehicles. The Barcelona Bus Rapid Transit project involves the expansion of the public transportation network and routes and the construction of dedicated lanes for buses. Other measures related to sustainable agriculture and forestry, like the Sustainable Agriculture and Forestry, or the Agroforestry for Water Conservation program, involve the provision of technical assistance and training to farmers and forest managers to adopt sustainable practices, and promote the use of sustainable irrigation techniques to reduce water consumption, and improve the sustainability of agricultural and forestry practices. In various cities and towns across Spain, they have established a network of weather stations and other monitoring systems to track and assess the impacts of climate change on the country, thanks to the Climate Change Monitoring and Assessment program. The country is also carrying out several programs for the natural ecosystem protection and restoration of degraded landscapes, including the planting of trees and the establishment of green spaces in various areas, to preserve the country's natural resources and biodiversity and improve the resilience of ecosystems to climate change. A strong focus is placed for educational and outreach programs implemented in schools and universities across Spain, involving the development of educational materials, the delivery of workshops and lectures, or the organization of public events, to raise awareness about climate change and promote sustainable practices. Spain has also worked with international organizations, such as the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF, to share knowledge and expertise on climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. In terms of policies and regulations, Spain has implemented a number of them, such as the Spanish Climate Change Act and the Spanish Renewable Energy Act, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which promote the implementation of carbon pricing mechanisms and the establishment of emissions reduction targets. Italy has also made some successful and significant steps to mitigate and adapt to climate change across the country. For example, Italy has set a target of producing 28% of its energy from renewable sources by 2030. They have made significant strides in developing renewable energy, including wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, while investing in new technologies such as geothermal and tidal power. The country has also implemented several policies to encourage the use of electric cars, bicycles, and public transportation, while investing in infrastructure for alternative fuel vehicles, including electric vehicle charging stations and hydrogen fueling stations. Italy has a long tradition of organic farming and sustainable agriculture. They support organic farming and reduce the use of pesticides and other chemicals in agriculture, thanks to various policies. In terms of urban planning, Italian cities, like Milan, are investing in green spaces, by executing a project which aims to plant 3 million trees by 2030, while Rome is investing in green roofs and walls to reduce the urban heat island effect. Climate change is having a strong impact on the Italian coastline. That is why they are taking steps to invest in coastal protection measures, such as beach nourishment, dune restoration, and sea walls to protect against rising sea levels and increased storm surges. Kosovo has made significant progress in increasing the share of renewable energy in its energy mix. In recent years, the country has invested in the expansion of its solar and wind energy capacities, and renewable energy sources currently account for about 20% of Kosovo's total electricity generation. They have also carried out a number of initiatives to improve energy efficiency, including the establishment of energy efficiency targets for buildings and the adoption of energy-efficient appliances and equipment. For example, the Kosovo Energy Efficiency Agency, KEA, has implemented a program to retrofit public buildings with energy-efficient lighting and heating systems, which has helped to reduce energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. Kosovo has implemented a carbon tax, which puts a price on carbon emissions and encourages businesses and individuals to reduce their emissions and adopt cleaner technologies. It has been successful in reducing emissions from the energy and transportation sectors, and the revenue generated from the tax is used to fund clean energy projects and other climate-related initiatives. The country has also invested in climate-resilient infrastructures, such as seawalls and other protective measures to protect coastal communities from sea level rise and storms. For example, the city of Ulcinj has built a seawall to protect against sea level rise and storms, which has helped to reduce the risk of flooding and erosion. More sustainable and climate-resilient agricultural practices are being performed, such as the use of conservation agriculture techniques, which can help to reduce soil erosion and improve water retention. For instance, the Kosovo Agricultural Advisory Service, KOS, has implemented a program to promote the adoption of conservation agriculture practices by farmers, which has helped to improve soil health and increase crop yields. In order to improve water management and reduce water waste, the Kosovo Water Agency, KWA, has implemented a number of initiatives, such as the use of drip irrigation systems by farmers and the reuse of treated wastewater for irrigation, which has helped to improve water efficiency. Jordan is a vulnerable country in regards to climate change, due to its arid climate, limited water resources, and high temperatures. Despite the challenges posed by its limited resources, the country has implemented a number of successful initiatives to mitigate climate change impact, demonstrating a strong commitment. The country has invested in solar and wind power, with the aim to produce 20% of its electricity from renewable energy sources. Thus, they have constructed the Maran solar power plant, providing clean electricity to more than 50,000 households, and the Tafala wind farm, generating clean electricity for more than 100,000 households. Jordan is one of the world's most water-scarce countries, and as a result, it has a strong focus on implementing measures to conserve water resources. The country has invested in desalination technology, treated wastewater for agricultural irrigation, and promoted water conservation in households. As Jordan is home to a number of historic and cultural sites, including Petra and Wadi Rum, The country has enforced several policies to promote sustainable tourism, including eco-tourism initiatives, promoting responsible tourism practices and developing sustainable tourism infrastructures. Regarding agriculture, the country is carrying out various measures to ensure that agriculture remains sustainable in the face of climate change, which include the use of drought-tolerant crops, water-efficient irrigation techniques and the development of climate-resilient farming practices. Lastly, Jordan is investing in sustainable building practices, including the use of energy-efficient materials, green roofs, and rainwater harvesting systems. 1.4. How do we work on those topics with youth? Youth Workers Treasure Chest, Informal and Non-Formal Educational Practical Methods of Work. The next is a description of the 7 Days Challenge, which is a powerful tool for raising awareness, building community and encouraging action among young people. The 7 Days Challenge is a work method that involves engaging youth in a week-long challenge to take action on a particular issue or cause each day. The challenge typically involves a series of daily activities or tasks related to the issue at hand, and can be tailored to the specific interests and needs of the youth group. This method is often used as a way to engage and mobilize young people of all backgrounds about a particular issue, such as climate change, environmental protection or social justice. This activity can be implemented in a variety of settings, including schools, universities, community organizations, and online platforms. We share some links to various social networks which explain and share resources to carry out this activity. The following is an example of how the 7 Days Challenge could be implemented with youth and incorporated into their own lives and communities. Day 1. Reduce your carbon footprint. Youth are challenged to assess their own carbon footprint by completing an online calculator, or by keeping track of their daily energy and transportation usage. They are then encouraged to come up with ideas for reducing their carbon footprint, such as turning off lights when not in use, using public transportation or carpooling, or reducing meat consumption. Reducing one's carbon footprint is an important way to mitigate the impacts of climate change and contribute to a more sustainable future. To learn more about our carbon footprint and find ways to reduce it, here are 5 resources and materials. Global Footprint Network offers metrics that are simple, meaningful, and scalable, actionable insights about natural resource consumption and capacity, and tools and analysis to guide informed decisions. It includes an online calculator that allows us to estimate our carbon footprint based on our energy and transportation habits. Carbon footprint. This resource from the World Wildlife Fund provides information on what carbon footprint is, how it is calculated and how it can be reduced through simple actions such as using energy-efficient appliances. Carbon Footprint Calculator for Transportation. This online calculator allows us to estimate our carbon footprint from transportation activities, such as driving, flying and using public transportation. It also provides further suggestions for reducing emissions. Carbon footprint of different foods. This website provides different carbon footprint calculators and information on different types of food, including the emissions associated with production, transportation, and processing. Carbon footprint of household items. The Consumer Footprint Calculator allows EU citizens to calculate the environmental impacts of their consumption patterns, and of common household items, including appliances, electronics, and household goods, and to evaluate how changes in their lifestyle may affect their personal footprint. Act Now application. Daily tips and a mechanism to track your habits. It is available for iOS and Android. Lesson, Poker Chip Model, Global Carbon Pools and Fluxes. This activity helps participants visualize and model a commonly published diagram of global carbon pools and fluxes. Day 2, Go Green at Home. During the second day, young people are challenged to identify areas of their homes where they can make more sustainable choices, such as using energy-efficient lighting, reducing water usage or composting organic waste. They are encouraged to share their ideas and actions with their families and communities, and to encourage others to adopt more sustainable practices. Here are 5 online resources to work on these topics. Sustainable Home by Earth 911. This resource provides tips and tools for making your home more sustainable, including information on energy efficiency, water conservation, and waste reduction. Your Plan, Your Planet, a new, info-packed game to learn how to reduce waste, save energy and food at home. Games, quizzes, and videos about the environment. Play games and find other activities to do online, including crossword puzzles and word searches to learn about sustainable living and how to reduce environmental impact at home. Online student-developed games. This web showcases games and online activities, ranging in format and difficulty, and tests your skills and knowledge of sustainability issues. How to Go Green in Your Home by Treehugger. This article provides practical tips and resources for making your home more environmentally friendly, including ideas for reducing energy and water consumption, and recycling and composting. Sustainable Home Checklist. This checklist provides a step-by-step guide to help you assess the sustainability of your home and identify areas for improvement. Day 3. Take action in your community. The challenge on the third day is to identify opportunities to take action on climate change in youth's communities, such as planting trees, starting a community garden, or organizing a clean-up event. Young people are encouraged to work with local organizations or authorities to implement their ideas and make a positive impact in their community. Here are further resources to engage in community action. How to create a climate action plan through community engagement. This resource guides us to create a strategic document that outlines a collection of measures and policies to address climate challenges. Promoting sustainable development with community engagement. The text explains how to engage communities and tap into collective intelligence to set better priorities and facilitate sustainable development on a local scale. Take Action Toolkit. This toolkit, ideal for small groups, to work through a set of questions and prompts to plan a community climate action project. Take action for nature in your community. Lots of advice and inspiring case studies to help individuals work with others in their community to do even more for nature. 10 Simple Things You Can Do to Help the Environment, by the World Wildlife Fund, WWF. This list provides easy and practical actions we can take to make a difference in our community, including conserving water and supporting sustainable agriculture. Community Cleanup Activity Guide, quick how-to guide to conduct a community cleanup in the neighborhood. Day 4, Educate Others. Youth are challenged to educate others about climate change and the actions they can take to reduce their carbon footprint. They are encouraged to share information and resources with their peers, families, and communities, and to use social media or other platforms to raise awareness about climate change. The next are a few resources to educate others. Climate Change Education. This site provides information and resources for educating people about climate change, including lesson plans, interactive games, and activities, and information on how to get involved in climate action. Climate Change Web Quests. Involve young people and their youth leaders in an internet use focused on the educational process in a team-based environment, stimulating research and building research skills, enabling material production and critical thinking. Educational Tools and Resources. This resource provides access to a comprehensive learning program promoting circular economy ideals and objectives. Lesson plans, teacher guides, and online environmental resources for educators. This web offers an array of environmental and science-based lesson plans, activities, and ideas. Climate Change Education, by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, provides lesson plans and information on how to involve youth in climate action. Education Resources for Young People. Free educational resources for young people to explore the challenges our planet faces and be inspired to take action. Day 5, Get Involved in Politics. The challenge is to learn about climate change policies and legislation at the local, national, or international level, and to get involved in advocating for climate action. Youth are encouraged to write letters, make phone calls, or participate in protests or other advocacy efforts to support climate action. Further resources and materials. Take Political Action. This resource provides information on how to get involved in advocating for climate action, including tips on contacting elected officials. How to advocate for climate change action. This article provides practical steps and resources for advocating for climate action, including participating in protests and events. How to communicate effectively with policymakers. An alternative approach to develop ways to engage positively to policymakers. Non-profit awareness campaigns. The complete guide, an effective way to raise interest and boost political changes. Youth for Climate Action. UNICEF's advice and tips to help young people take action to protect the future of our planet. Day 6, Explore Renewable Energy. This time, the challenge consists of learning about renewable energy sources, such as solar, wind or hydroelectric power, and to explore ways to incorporate these sources into our own lives and communities. Young people are encouraged to visit renewable energy facilities, research funding opportunities or explore other ways to support the transition to a low-carbon economy. Day 7, Reflect and Celebrate. The last day of the challenge, young people are encouraged to reflect on the actions they have taken throughout the week and to celebrate their accomplishments. They are also encouraged to continue taking action on climate change in the future and to share their experiences and learnings with others. Here are several resources that may be useful for young people as they reflect on their actions and learning. 5 activities that promote reflection. The metacognitive work of reflecting on learning boosts engagement and encourages the development of critical thinking skills. Reflective practice teaching activities and resources. Toolkits below to learn how anyone can help solve some of the world's most pressing issues. How much do you know about our Earth? Test your knowledge with quizzes. 7 free reflection activities and revision exercises for trainers. Reflection activities give participants a chance to revise the ideas and concepts that they have learnt and to reinforce learning in a fun way.